Hi, I'm Aaron Marcus, and I am really excited about having our guest today, Joe Henson. He's just an amazing and incredibly talented person. So let me just share a little bit of information about him with you. Uh, Joe Henson, he's been shooting headshots for over 30 years, and he's considered by many people as the industry's premier headshot photographer. And I know you're going to think that this is a typo, but it's not. He has actually shot over 16,000. That's right, 16,000 headshots. And he shoots people who are just getting started, people who are very experienced, a lot of famous people. I'll just name a couple of the people for you. I mean, otherwise, the entire webinar would be filled with listing names of people he shot. Annette Bening, Tyler Perry, J.K. Simmons, Adam Horowitz of the Beastie Boys, Selma Blair, Sean Young, John Henson is his brother. Hopefully he got a good deal. Crispin Glover, Charles Grodin, and Lisa Lampanelli. That must have been a really interesting photo shoot. And Joe, I got to ask you about that sometime later. Just so you know how to get to him, you can visit him, joehenson.com. And all of his social media outlets and platforms are listed there as well, so you can follow him and reach him there as well. So, Joe, welcome to the webinar. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Aaron. I'm excited to share some information with your listeners.
Great, great. So here's what I want to do today. I want to have you take us through the process of how to find a great headshot photographer, how to prepare for your session, and how to get the most out of the session when you are actually working with the photographer. And there's certainly going to be, other questions in there as well, but that's the general overall theme. And the reason for that is because headshots, I mean, look, they've always been very important, but in today's time period, they're even more crucial than in the past. And part of that is simply because you are typically only seen by a thumbnail, by casting directors or possibly agents and directors. And that's how people generally are brought in for auditions. So your headshot has to be incredibly effective. So to kind of start things off, if someone is trying to find a great headshot photographer, what would you recommend someone do?
Well, I think the first thing to understand is that there isn't just one great headshot photographer out there. There's the great headshot photographer for you. And that means that you feel comfortable with them, that they understand what your goals are and how to help you meet those goals. So what I would do is start with your network. I would talk with people who have had headshots done, try to get a consensus of who people were satisfied with, who people were happy with. If you have representation, you might want to check with them on who they recommend. That sometimes the agents keep track of names that they've heard over and over that seem to be people who are doing the job right. And by doing the job right, what I mean is these are your ambassadors, these photographs. They go out and open up doors for you. They create opportunities for you. There's no way to overstate how important a great headshot can be, because actors can't be in everybody's office at the same time, but their photograph can. And if your photograph grabs people's attention and tells them the right stuff about you, where your characters come from, what your age range is, what you come off like in person, that's a good start toward understanding how to cast you. You want to do some of the work for the casting people for them. You want to explain to them, when you call me in, this is what I'm going to feel like and look like, and this is what qualities I have that are the bedrock of the characters I'm designed to play. And people, actors have a tough time with that. They have a tough time understanding how other people see them. You know, it's easy to say how you see yourself, and I get a lot of clients who come in and say, well, you know, I want to be like this. Want to be is not what you want to play with. You want to play with how does an audience perceive you? When you walk out on stage, when you appear on screen, people have takeaways from your presence, and you want to play to that. You want to use that to your advantage.
Absolutely. And and before we even, because you're starting to hit on some points that I definitely wanted to go into even more detail with you in just a couple of minutes, just to kind of take a step back and begin discussing the first point that you made as far as hearing suggestions, from other talent, from other industry professionals. So let's say you've got a listing of a couple of people, and you set up, and actually this is something I wanted to ask. I mean, typically, do you, and I don't know if you can speak only for yourself or whether you can speak more globally about typically what happens with headshot photographers, but like, do you normally have a phone conversation with someone first? Do people typically come into your studio to meet with you first, in order to get a better sense of who you are?
Well, I definitely have a phone conversation with everyone that I'm going to shoot. It's a rare person that just signs up and comes in. My work it can be done a lot of different ways in terms of understanding what people are like, what they look like, what their goals are. It can be done on the phone, it can be done through email. I always start with having some kind of visual of the person. I have them send me a selfie or have them send me a selection of photographs so that I can get a sense of what they look like, who they are, what qualities their looks have, and then I can help them skew that toward what their goals are. So yeah, I definitely want to have some contact with the person I'm going to shoot way before the session so that we both have an opportunity to bring all of the elements together, including wardrobe, including defining the looks that we want to shoot, um, aspects of their own personal preferences. Some of this boils down to I like certain kinds of backgrounds or I like certain kinds of light. And every person I shoot, I try to put their interests into what we do so that they're happy with the product because they're going to be much more anxious to use it if it's something that represents their original vision.
Yeah, and also just for full disclosure, just so everybody knows, Joe shot my most recent headshot, and he's just phenomenal. So in all of my signatures and my emails, that's Joe's headshot. Um, if someone, let's say, is looking at a photographer's website, and they're looking at headshots, and the person, they're not a technician, they're not a photographer. What kind of things would you suggest someone look for in a photograph, in a headshot, that would make them say, "Yeah, I like the way this person shoots"?
Well, I would start with okay, so the first part of it is that headshot photographers generally begin to kind of create a style inside what they do. So a recognizable style is kind of a natural uh, gravitation for shooting. I try to avoid that 100%. I try to break up my style. I try to alter it all the time because the goal of these pictures is not to tell someone who shot you. The goal of these pictures is to tell someone who you are. And if the photographer's style is imposed on each person, you start to tell the viewer more about who took your picture than who you are. So I would look to try to recognize if they're just repeating a formula over and over. That's important because the casting people receive, thousands of these things, and when they're keyed more into who shot you than who you are, you're doing promotional work for the photographer, not for you.
Actually, that's a great point. And one of the things And look, I'm certainly a real advocate for your work. One of the things that you do that I think is just really unbelievable is that, I mean, besides being, and you touched on this a little bit, I just want to expand on it a little bit more. Not only are you a great technician, I mean, the shots are just beautiful, but you have this ability, and I don't know how you developed this, but you have this ability to see someone, understand, how they could be cast, what kind of look is right for them, and somehow magically capture that in an image. So you don't just go in and just take nice pictures of people. It's almost like you do this sociological makeup of the person, and somehow you're able to translate that, and that's what people walk out with, is a perfect image for them.
Well, I'm really glad that you see that because that's like kind of my raison d'etre. That's exactly what I go for in every person I shoot is to really key into what makes them unique, what makes them interesting. How can that be used in a piece? How can it be used to create a character, to generate a presence that's useful to casting directors, to writers, and so it's always been my goal to understand what actors' building blocks are. And like this morning, I did a little Google search on acting types. And I came up with some writer's website where he delineated 52 acting types. And they're accurate and they're great. And if you just look at that kind of stuff, you'll start to understand how you fall into the spectrum. And that's important to know. The people I've shot that are the most successful actors are people who understand at a very core level what they bring to the table, and they polish it up to be the best presentation of that possible. They play to how audiences see them, to what brings them, and they learn it, and they bring in all the aspects of that and buff it up and serve it up on a platter.
The fact is, I know a lot of times actors like to say, don't pigeonhole me, I can do anything. Well, the fact of the matter is, yes, there are stars who can play against type, but those are the rare exceptions. Most of us get cast with how we look, and it's not good or bad. And I know we had this discussion. I know I'm not the leading guy. I'm not this good-looking guy. I'm the doctor, I'm the lawyer, I'm the guy who fixes your computer, I'm the social worker, the politician, the nice guy. I mean, those are the kinds of areas where I get work. So instead of fighting things and letting your ego get in the way, what you want to do is embrace it and use what you have. Use not only your physical looks, but your life experiences, and use that to your advantage. And that is how you do want to pitch yourself, because if that's how other people see you, that's how you're going to get brought in for a casting. So for someone who maybe is just getting started, or even for a lot of people who've been in the industry for a while, but they are just kind of clueless, what would you recommend someone do to try to help figure out what is their type?
I would absolutely suggest that people take a class. The way to get at this stuff is objective viewpoint. Take it out of yourself and bring it to people who are trained to see what actors are. Other actors, I've had people come in and tell me that one of the exercises in their class was to walk up to total strangers and give them a questionnaire about how the stranger perceived them, which is kind of interesting, but I don't think it's totally necessary. But I do think it's necessary to communicate with people who have a really wide understanding of the business, and that can look at you not for what you want to be, but for what you are. I mean, that's your playing field. It's not something to ignore or to try to rise above. It's something to work within. You take somebody like John Turturro as an actor. He knows exactly what he is. He knows that he is a character actor. He knows that he has certain qualities of vulnerability, of quirkiness, and those are like to kind of create a parallel. If he was a painter, those are the colors that he works with, and he can create a masterpiece by working with the colors that are given to him, that are part of his makeup. And that's what every actor should do, is learn what are the colors, what are the tones of what I am, and how can I skew that to create something amazing. So yeah, that's the biggest lesson that an actor can learn, is to look at themselves the way others see them, not how they want to be seen.
Yeah, and along with asking any photographer that you were considering working with that question, but something else that you touched on that I thought was a really good point too is comfortability. Because I can tell you from experience, if I don't care how great a photographer might be, if for any reason you don't feel comfortable with the person, you might fool other people in the room, but you're not going to fool the camera. And that camera will pick up some of those kinds of feelings. So certainly you've got to feel relaxed. You have to trust the person. And you are asking someone to make very important decisions, along with you. So I was just thinking maybe some of the other questions that someone should be asking, and I'm just going to throw out a couple off the top of my head. If there are any others, please let us know. But along with figuring out your type, certainly I would be asking, and not necessarily starting off with this, but what are your fees? Do I need a makeup artist? And if so, and by the way, you should always have a makeup artist. At least that's my feeling. Whether you're, a guy, a woman, it doesn't make any difference. And one other little side note, I know that sometimes actors will try to save money by bringing in a friend or someone they know who does makeup, and they're not going to charge them that much, or they'll do it free. My recommendation is always use the photographer's makeup artist. And yeah, maybe you'll spend a little bit more money, but this is your headshot. I mean, this is your one opportunity to be seen by people throughout the world. And a makeup artist who knows the photographer, works with the photographer, knows what the photographer wants, what they need, they can communicate well. And the other thing too is, if for any reason, and I doubt this would happen in most situations, but if you use the photographer's makeup artist and for some reason the makeup looks horrible and ruins the shot, well, then maybe you can talk with the photographer and say, hey, look, I like the shot, but the makeup was horrible. This is somebody you recommend, and if they agree, maybe you can work something out. You bring in your own person, I assume the photographer is going to say, hey, look, I like the shot. Your makeup artist wasn't very good. Yeah. So anyhow, I was curious what your thoughts were about that.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I work with really great hair and makeup people. One of them I married, and we've been working together for 16 years. It's part of the package. It's an element of how the photography comes together. You began the question by talking about comfort and how someone feels with a photographer. The way photographers create the environment that you shoot in is really important, because you have to feel safe, you have to feel energized, and you have to feel confident that the person who's shooting you is interested in getting a great product for you and is interested in what they do. I shoot tethered to a computer when I'm in the studio. That means there's a wire that goes from my camera to my computer, and every shot I take comes up on the monitor for us to both look at. It makes it foolproof. It also builds the confidence of the person I'm shooting, because they see the effect of what I'm doing. They see that I know my side, and that allows them to relax. They're going to know that I'm going to make them look good no matter what. And the other aspect of it is creating um, a sense of play. This is, it's not like something that needs to be taken too seriously when you're in the environment. You know, uh, I've seen some really great actors up close, and they're loose and easygoing about things, and they understand that it's all a game, and that you know, the stuff that you do at home in front of your mirror when you're playing supermodel or trying to look cool, that's what you should be doing in front of the camera too. You should feel fearless in that. There's a delete button, you know, and you don't have to worry about being embarrassed.
But just to jump in from the actor's perspective, and actually, I keep saying actors, but this is for models as well, because lots of models shoot headshots, especially a lot of times they use it on the front of their comp card, and also sometimes models are using headshots for, it could be TV commercial work and things like that. But I can tell you that, and this has happened to me too. You feel pressure. You feel a little nervous. You're thinking, I got to get this thing done. And one of the things, and once again, that you have this amazing ability to do is to calm people down. Because I'm sure there are people who walk into your studio who are feeling nervous, and they're feeling a little scared, and they're feeling a little overwhelmed. And I guess that's also when you put on your, psychologist hat, and how to push people's buttons in a positive way to get them to relax, to get them to open up, and to really have them release some of that fear. And I'm sure you do it different ways depending on who you're dealing with. But that's also such an important factor with any headshot photographer that you are considering. One other just like really quick question before we talk about the preparation. I assume it's also really important to find out, do you get any 8x10s from the session? Is that part of the package? If there's any kind of editing that needs to be done to a photo, what are the fees for that? Do you recommend any printers? Once you get the headshots done, and or maybe even, are there any agents? Let's say somebody doesn't have an agent, and they come to you, and you're doing the headshot. You get a sense of their type. I assume that there are some headshot photographers who have had enough contacts with agents to know, yeah, this would be a really good agent for you to submit yourself to. I mean, certainly you can't guarantee that the agent's going to take them on for representation, but you certainly know enough about so many different agencies that, if it's more of a character actor, you might know, yeah, this would be a really good agency to contact. So are those things that you would expect to do as well?
Yeah, I try to help my clients through every step of what they need to do in the headshot world. Step one, after they've identified what photographer they want to work with, if they choose me, I want to know what are the markets they're interested in working in. And within those markets, I help them identify what it is that they are and how to put it together in a photograph that makes it very clear to other people. Then we've got like a little battle plan for what we want to shoot. And we start pulling together the wardrobe, the personal preferences, the aspects of the shoot that involve what they need to bring to work with.
And actually, Joe, if I could just jump in for 1 second, something that we did that I thought was really, it was so incredibly helpful, and I just want to share it with people. So instead of lugging, 3 garment bags and a suitcase to your studio, something we did, I think this would be great for everybody. What we did was actually I put on some clothes for my home. I also went into a store and went into the changing room, put on some clothes, took the pictures, sent it to you. And with you knowing what kind of backgrounds we're looking at, you knowing what kind of coloring I have, you were able to tell me, yeah, bring this, 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 and this. I mean, I still brought, a number of selections, but we were able to narrow it down because you were able to see it ahead of time. And, the actor, I mean, we're not going to know ahead of time what would be the best kind of wardrobe, even with coloring and even styles too. On our own, it's always best to have the photographer make that choice for you. So yeah, if you can, always try to send them, like unless you're good friends with the photographer and you can just stop in their studio. Most people don't want that. So sending it in ahead of time and having, a conversation about it, that was such a great idea that you had. And so I just wanted to let other people know about that.
Yeah, great. I mean, this is every person who signs up with me receives an information email that breaks down the kinds of suggestions that I can kind of give them on what they need to bring clothes-wise for different looks, what works best with their coloring, and I'm happy to bring it to as much detail as they need to understand what they should bring, and it's always better to bring more stuff than less, to have options. So,
Now, okay.
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, now, are there certain types of wardrobe or certain types of accessories or jewelry that you can pretty much make a blanket statement about, do not bring this kind of stuff to a photo shoot?
Well, less is more in headshots. You don't want to overwhelm the viewer with a lot of accessories and a lot of stuff that grabs attention away from your face and your eyes. So think of the clothing as more of window dressing. The important thing is what's in the window, not what's around the window. And so you want the clothing to quietly support the idea of the photograph, but not gain attention away from you. People, in photographs, what you're wearing, if that's what they're trying to sell, like in fashion, then the clothing are the important thing to focus on. In photographs and headshots, it's important that the person not even be aware of the clothing, but just kind of be nudged in the right direction by what you're wearing.
It's like nice wallpaper. And that's the way I've always viewed it. It's like nice wallpaper. And it enhances the image of enhances the room, but you don't want to stare at it.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, after doing this a long time, I break down my wardrobe ideas into three basic units. I deal with what the casual kind of clothing, like weekend people, family, health, pop culture products, business clothing, what people would wear to an office. That's good also for government films. It's good for industrials. It's good for nighttime courtroom type stuff. Game of House of Cards, and then dramatic clothing, things that people wear out on a Saturday night or to an audition. Something that is more on the darker side, that gives their face a nice frame, and that quietly supports whatever is the expression that they're giving. Those three areas pretty much cover everything unless you get into specific typing for like commercial print.
So it almost seems like then for some actors, it might be really helpful to have more than one headshot in different categories as well. So that way, depending on what the project is, you can submit the most appropriate headshot for that particular project.
Yeah, well, this is the great thing about working currently. Most people do not make 8x10s of every shot that they work with. They work with them electronically. And the more variation and the more options you can give somebody, the more chance you're going to hit the nail on the head for the particular image they have in mind. So I offer a 2-look shoot and a 4-look shoot, and almost everyone goes with the 4-look shoot because once you have those 4 looks on pixels, you're able to use those in a way that it kind of expands the repertoire of what you can represent yourself as. And it doesn't cost any extra money once you get the retouched images finished. You're not even having to go to the next step of having hard copies done. The 8x10 prints are kind of fading away. And everybody now works with electronic images, and they can upload them to casting sites, they can email them to casting directors, and it's, doesn't cost a thing to send them through cyberspace.
Yeah, and you know what? And even if you do decide to print a couple of them, because especially in some of the smaller markets, sometimes they still will, accept a headshot. But, like for me, when I used to literally print 2 to 3 thousand headshots and composite sheets at a time, maybe if you just printed up 10, it's not going to cost you very much money. And that way, if you happen to be at a casting and they do want a a hard copy, you have it. But no, you're right. I mean, probably, 95% of the time, everything's just going to be uploaded, which makes it so much easier. So still like the only other question I had like prior to going to the session, are there any things that you would recommend the actor do to help prepare? So let's say if they figured out their type, I mean, would it be a good idea to uh, try to learn and test out how to reach that certain kind of look? If you have that warm, friendly, inviting kind of guy, maybe you need to think about some experience in your life that will give you that feeling. Maybe you can just take your cell phone just to practice, see if that look really is coming through, whether it looks believable. Would that be something that you would recommend someone do prior to going to a session?
I would say that if you're working with the right photographer, it wouldn't hurt to do that stuff, but it's not necessary because what tends to happen in my experience is that people who think about their headshots too much begin to psych themselves out or get overwhelmed with the possibilities. And it's a very simple process when it's done correctly. It's not something you need to practice, it's not something you need to rehearse. Most actors are used to creating characters through time and space. A piece of film, time on stage is an arc of a character. Photography is about one instant of time. The photographer's job is to set the stage, create the right lighting for what the person's going to do, find the angles, and all of the technical stuff has to be solidly put together. Then the photographer's job is to encourage the right kind of expression and energy to sell that whole picture. I think it's starting to storm here, so if you see bright light, there's lightning outside. It's not me imploding. But I think it's helpful to do some of that stuff for some people, but it's certainly not necessary. And most of the people I shoot who come in and just put themselves in my hands are going to get exactly what they need because I know what my job is and I know how to help almost anyone. If you're working with someone who's not that experienced, it might be in your best interest to bring as much as possible in terms of background work, but I don't think that it's a crucial part of when you're working with someone who's experienced.
Got it. And just a couple other really quick things. So I'm assuming everybody is still shooting color shots.
Well, I mean, color is the closest to what you come off like in real life. I love black and white. I shot black and white film for 20 years of my career, and it's beautiful and it boils people down to their essence. But most projects that you're going to get cast in are going to be captured in color, and so it's good for casting people to see the elements of your coloring in real life, and especially redheads. I mean, that's a big selling point. Redheads are cast generally because they're a redhead, and what that feeling, what that I don't know what the word is, what it gives people as an understanding of them, and
Sure.
so yeah, I would start in color, but understand that in the digital world, anything that's captured in color can always be altered to black and white if you need. So if you're going to be in a playbill and they want a black and white shot, it's something that a talented person can easily convert the color shot to black and white in a way that maximizes the impact of the black and white.
Sure. And then even as far as the size goes, since everything is going to be up on a monitor, doing full body shots, your face it kind of disappears. So I'm assuming that people are still pretty much, normally doing chest to the top of the head, so the face really pops out.
Yeah, I mean, I vary up the cropping when I'm shooting because not because I'm just trying to willy-nilly give people uh, wide options, but I try to work with the body type of the person I'm shooting. If your body type adds to a casting person's understanding of your characters, for instance, if a guy is really muscular, you might want to show that very clearly in some shots because that's a plus. That's an element that you can give someone to understand, that you can do physical roles. If a woman has a certain body type that defines the kind of roles that she would play, it's a good idea to have some shots that show it.
Got it. Okay. And I guess like the very last thing, as far as people receiving them, are they generally uploaded into like a Dropbox, or do people get CDs, or how exactly are they gotten to the talent?
How do I get my clients the photographs that I take?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so everyone I shoot, at the end of their session, I upload their entire session to an online gallery that allows them to access through a password protected gallery the shots that we took. And they can share that with anyone whose opinion they want. All they have to do is tell people their password, and they can have friends log on, or casting people, or agents, or managers. Um, Once they've chosen the shot that they want to use, and I help people a lot in terms of narrowing down to the best of the best choices. It's if you do this right, you shoot a lot of good shots, and so it becomes very difficult to get it down to the best. And I have a good eye for helping people do that because when you're looking at yourself, you're not seeing what other people see. You tend to zero in on the qualities or the aspects of your presence that are either bothersome to you, you're worried about, or you don't see it accurately as a whole. And having someone who can look at it and perceive exactly what the collective whole of the picture is about helps you see which ones are the best. Once people choose the shots they want to work with, we typically go to a retouching phase. My philosophy on retouching is the less the better. I would, prefer to not retouch a picture at all if it doesn't need it. What needs retouching is distractions, stray hairs, blemishes, threads on clothing, things that because you're frozen in time and space attract the viewer's eye more than they would in real life. But you don't want to alter your age range. That's crazy. You're going to walk in being whatever you look like. Although photographing someone typically makes them look a little older because you see the details more like in a still state than you do when they're animated and speaking in front of you. So I tend to downplay that kind of stuff enough to bring it back to what they come off like in real life. Once they've chosen the pictures and okayed their retouching, like I send them a JPEG for their approval, once they say it's good to go, I send them two different versions of their picture. A full resolution file for printing and for using as basically a digital negative, and a web optimized file that works well with email and websites, because the two resolutions of images are very different. Printing image is usually 300 dpi, that means dots per inch, so that's like the little dots that make up the image, and the web stuff is 72 dpi and needs to be a smaller file to be able to work with people's email. So I give them both versions of their picture, and they're always available to contact me if they need something that we haven't foreseen. But those two usually work for everything that somebody might use their pictures for.
Got it. So it seems like then another question to ask is whether the photographer is willing to help narrow down the choices, because I don't know if that's something everybody is willing to do, but that seems like it would be a crucial component to what you want from the photographer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of my job is making that narrowing down process as hard as possible. I want to flood someone with so many options that they're overwhelmed, and then my job is to help them see past the similarities and get to the ones that actually shine. And, what I do, I learned a technique called a binary edit, where you take two photographs, put them next to each other on your screen, and delete the one that doesn't get as much attention from you as the other. And then you bring on the next photo, and then delete the one of those two. And as long as you're keeping within a particular type, you're going to find the best shot by just going through them like that. It's like the old game of with cards where kids slap down the cards, and whoever has the highest one wins that hand.
Right. Was
Yeah.
that spit?
Huh?
I think we used
Spit?
to call that spit. I think that was the name of it.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
Joe, hey, the very last thing, I just wanted to let people know, I know you're based in New York. I know you travel to Boston. I know you travel to the DC area. Are there any other areas that you typically travel to?
Those are our two like satellite studios. We go to Boston once every 2 months, and we've got a studio there that we love and that has a lot of great locations around it for natural light and is a beautiful space to work with for our studio stuff. DC, I go to once a month, and I've been going for 15 years, and we've sold out every trip that we've ever taken there because we really work hard to do this right and make sure that every person that we shoot gets our absolute best. So if you live in the DC area, there's a good chance we're going to be there within the next 3 or 4 weeks, anytime that you decide you want to do a shoot. Our studio is based in Manhattan, and we shoot there Monday through Friday. We usually do 2 shoots a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And anybody who's interested in talking about a session, I'm happy to sit with them for a second on the phone and discuss how I work, and they can send me a photograph of themselves. I'll give them my read on what it is about them that's the most sellable, unique stuff, and we start with that and we work our way through the process.
Great. Hey, well, Joe, I want to thank you so much. And you can be reached at joehenson.com. You go to the website, all your information is there. And just to let people know, you are not only an incredible technician, but you really are able to do things that are very unusual in the industry and really find that real essence and be honest with people and allow people to relax and really get what they need from a headshot. And so I just wanted to let people know about that. Thank you so much for sharing your information today.
Well, you're welcome, Aaron. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and you're so helpful in getting the right information out to people. Part of what I do is about staying involved and excited by my photography, and I'm always buying new equipment, playing with new ideas, and it's what keeps me jazzed up and excited about doing my job. So I hope that people will give me a chance to give them my read, and we'll see what happens on the next time we get together.
Sounds great, Joe. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Take care.
Well, this was an incredible session with Joe Henson. I always love talking with him. He just has an amazing approach to things. Also want to let you know, next month we're going to have another online webinar. And for those of you who are interested in having private mentoring with me, I do have different sessions that you can take. They're online, one-on-one. You can reach me and learn more about the sessions at howtoactandmodel.com/coaching. And don't forget, you can follow me on Twitter. You can go to my facebook.com/howtomodel page. It's a great place to ask me questions. And I post some really helpful acting and modeling information there. And don't forget, you can also go to my website, howtoactandmodel.com, and get a copy of my newest book, How to Become a Successful Actor and Model. I'm Aaron Marcus, and I can't wait to talk with you again soon.